This is Business Incorporated live from Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to the program. I'm Chimeze Obi. Well, we're coming up on the show. South Africa's biggest lender by value, First Rand, reports a 14% rise in half-year profits. Rwanda's Bank of Kigali's pre-tax profit jumped 16.5% in 2016 to 30.0 billion francs. Plus, more on Nigeria's economic recovery plans. Now let's get started, and of course starting here in Africa with the markets. Egypt's annual urban consumer price inflation soared to its highest level in more than 3 decades, hitting 30.2% in February. It's the 4th consecutive jump in inflation since the central bank abandoned its currency peg to the US dollar on November 3 in a dramatic move that has since seen the currency depreciate roughly by half. However, that did not deter the stock market. At intraday today, the EGX 30 index was up 1.29%. Nigeria's market was also looking good, up by 0.94% at midday Nigerian time. However, the South African market was down 0.85%, while Nairobi Stock Exchange closed down 1.11% on Wednesday. In the Middle East, markets were pulled down by a 5% overnight slide in oil prices, while Abu Dhabi was hit particularly hard as heavyweights First Gulf Bank and National Bank of Abu Dhabi traded ex-dividend. At intraday, Abu Dhabi stock index dropped 2.9% as First Gulf Bank tumbled 9% and National Bank of Abu Dhabi lost 5.6%. The pair are due to merge on April 1. Dubai's index fell 0.3% in very thin trade, with tourism-sensitive companies trading lower. Saudi Arabia's index edged down 0.44% in the first 10 minutes as most petrochemical shares declined in response to oil. However, Qatar was up 1.02% at intraday. In Europe, investors are reacting to a plunge in oil prices and are looking ahead to a rate decision from the European Central Bank later today. There are also a raft of earnings coming in. Let's talk to my colleague in Frankfurt, Lars Holter, to give us details. Good afternoon, Lars. Thank you very much for joining us. Our ECB chief, Mario Draghi, speaks today. What are the expectations from him after Wednesday's budget presentation by the Finance Minister, Philip Hammond?
Well, what we're expecting from Draghi, I have a hard time hearing you, but what we're expecting from the European Central Bank and from Mario Draghi is actually not that much. We know for sure, or pretty sure, that there's not going to be an interest rate hike at all. And that has to do mainly with inflation in the Eurozone. Now, we just heard recently in the last few days that officially the inflation rate is up to 2%, which is ironically the ECB's target rate. So you would think that they could raise interest rates now, but they won't, because Mario Draghi is not looking at the all-over top number here for inflation, but he's looking at the core inflation number, and that is still at 1%. Of course, that means he is taking out the volatile oil and food sector. Now, there's an argument to be made for that, of course, because those sectors are just way too volatile to maybe take into consideration. However, if prices go up in food and energy, people and corporations out there, they're still paying for it. So this is still real inflation that people are dealing with and that people are hurting from. So they are hoping that at some point interest rates will rise. All we will see today, that is pretty much what everybody here at the stock exchange in Frankfurt is talking about, is that maybe Mario Draghi and the ECB's policy statement will change in wording a little bit. It's said in January's statement that they are expecting interest rates to stay at the current or lower level for an extended period of time, and at least that part with the lower level, or maybe even the part of extended period of time, maybe that will drop out of the statement this time, and that would give investors a little bit of a hint that an end of this zero interest rate policy is at some point in sight.
Now, aside from Mario Draghi's speech, investors are also eyeing a raft of earnings coming in today, like the German drug maker Merck and France's Carrefour. Talk us through these earnings.
Well, it's a very simple story with Carrefour. If you look at the French retailer, they're doing pretty badly right now. On the home market in France, they are fighting with huge competition from other retailers, more than apparently in the past, and that pressured margins. And too much margin pressure, of course, that is hurting the books. And then Carrefour has also expanded over the last couple of years into China. Now, China is, of course, a very important market, a very interesting market for retailers too in the last couple of years, as the country is changing from a manufacturing economy also to a consumer economy. But of course, the Chinese economy itself is not doing that well, and that is one of the problems that Carrefour is experiencing there. When it comes to Merck, Merck had a great 2015, and now in 2016 for this past year, the numbers were flat, but that had mostly to do with the high cost of integration of Sigma Aldrich, an American laboratory equipment maker that, of course, fits well into the long-term strategy. And also at the same time, Merck is investing heavily in cancer research, because that, for that company, is the big play for the future.
Well, it seems to be all about healthcare for today. Let's look at other corporate news coming in still in the healthcare sector. Danish firm Novo Nordisk has begun talks with Global Blood Therapeutics, a U.S. company, for a potential acquisition. What will this mean for both companies and, of course, the investors?
Well, it sounds like a very interesting deal here, especially on the diabetes market. Now, what cancer is to Merck, as I just explained, diabetes is to Novo Nordisk. It is their main field that they're focusing on, but they haven't been that successful over the last couple of years, and they want to strengthen their portfolio. And of course, Global Blood Therapeutics goes right into that fold. They see this as very much strengthening their exposure to the diabetes field in terms of research and product development, medication development. So they're looking into this right now, but we should understand these are preliminary talks. So at this point, it is way too early to say whether anything is going to come out of this, if this ever leads to a deal or not.